And she cringed, and I didn't really know what was going on until I realized
You used
master
Yeah.
instead of original,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's mild compared to what was going on
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So it just got to the point where, I wasn't enjoying it anymore. I loved teaching. I loved the
Mm-hmm.
students. But the politics became so extreme that they came all the way around and became
Yeah.
so conservative,
Yeah.
really fascistic. They instituted speech codes. You couldn't say certain things on campus.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I had never felt so oppressed in my life.
Why is it that actual freedom scares so many
I
people?
don't know. I don't know. It was absolutely horrible, and some of the people there were so incompetent as well because they had been given, and I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
this word lightly, given their degrees
Yeah.
because of their oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a lot of incompetent people working there. And there was one English teacher who theoretically was supposed to have had training because she had a degree in English literature. And I mentioned Browning, and she said, "Oh, yeah, I think I might have heard of him." So I realized,
I'm a high school
time to
dropout
move
and I know
on.
about Browning.
Time to move on. So I came back to Santa Fe, and I would never have believed, if you had told me, 10 years before that I would be coming back to New Mexico, I wouldn't have believed
Yeah.
it. But about 5 years before I retired, I had a sabbatical for a year, and I decided I was going to write a book called The Land of Enchantment, which I did. It's over 1,000 pages. And I came to Santa Fe during the summer and fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
Santa Fe's not Gallup.
No.
It's not Gallup.
No, not at
There's
all.
civilization here. And it's also in color. It's not black and white. So I stayed here for 2 or 3 weeks in a bed and breakfast, did some research, took the year off, wrote most of my book, and decided to come back and retire here, which I did. And the other thing that made me decide to come back after that sabbatical, so my daughter and I decided to come, this is about a few months later, I told her how much I'd enjoyed it. So that winter, Robin and I came just to look around, just to
Mm-hmm.
see what houses were like and so on. And we stayed at some condo place that they were renting up in the hills somewhere. It was snowing. This is probably my only experience with what you might call the supernatural, because I'm a very skeptical person.
Mm-hmm.
I generally say that I'm an atheist, but I think I'm a very spiritual person because I believe that God is everywhere in all of
Mm-hmm.
us.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Indians say, Namaste.
Mm-hmm.
I greet the God in you. It greets the God in me.
Yeah.
I love that. And I found more spirituality in that stance than I ever did in the Catholic Church or in my family. So we're staying at this place, this condo, and it was snowing, and they had blackout curtains on the windows. And I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and it was pitch dark, pitch black. I kind of felt my way into the bathroom in this condo, and then got turned around, completely disoriented. Didn't know where I was. I'm feeling the walls. There's a moment of panic there. And all of a sudden, there was a light. It's embarrassing to even say this because it sounds so bizarre, but it's all true. A wafer of light, about this big,
Okay.
pale yellow, that moved to the light switch. So I knew where that was. Got to the light. I didn't turn the light on, but I knew where I got my bearings at that point. The light moves and shows me the foot of the bed. I get to the foot of the bed. The light moves up to the pillow. I get in bed. And then, of course, I can't go to sleep.
Sure.
What the hell is this? I get up and I start looking for cracks in the windows,
Mm-hmm.
for reflections. Maybe there's something in a lamp, some kind of misconnection in the wires. Everything. Nothing. There's no light getting in anywhere. And that light is there. And then it became playful. It started bouncing around. And I would go on the pillow and I'd push it, and it would go down and then pop up. And dancing all around. It was the most amazing thing. And instead of being frightened, I felt joyful, and I
Sure.
had no idea why.
Sure.
That night, I had the most amazing dream I ever had in my life, and it sounds like nothing, but I woke up feeling like I'd had some kind of transformation. And the dream was simply this. I walked into a little cafe in New Mexico, very basic, brown tables, wooden floor, nothing fancy, And at the other end of the cafe is this man who looks sort of Hispanic, sort of Indian, has a ponytail, young, really, really good looking, and had a shirt on that was the color of blue work shirts, but it wasn't a work shirt. And I felt this enormous pull, and there was nothing erotic about it at all.
Yeah.
It was a purely spiritual love. And he looked at me and he smiled and he said, "Not yet." And then I woke up. And for some reason, I was elated. Robin woke up and I said, "I think I had some kind of paranormal experience." I told her all about it. She said, "Oh my God, if it happens again, wake me up." That night, it happened again. I woke her up. I said, "Robin, look at this." And she tried to touch it. It would move away from her.
Yeah.
It was like my light.
Yeah.
She saw
Yeah.
it. And at one point, it flew up in the air. Like, I don't remember exactly what I did, or what she did, but it just jumped up in the air and kind of exploded like a butterfly or a bat or something. I said, "What did you see?" I said, "Wait a minute, don't tell me what you saw. Don't tell me. Let's draw it." So we each drew it independently. We drew the same thing. She said a butterfly, I said a bat. But,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So that happened 3 nights in a row. We decided we're going to go to Taos just to visit, because I'd never been there. First night in Taos, I'm wondering, is this light going to be here? And it was, but it was very, very weak. It was almost white, pale, very kind of shaky. And that was it. We decided we didn't like Taos, came back here, and the condo we were staying in was no longer available because they had some kind of plumbing problems. They put us in another one. And I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. In this new condo now, the light was there again, strong, bright. And I said, I don't know what this is. I have no idea what it is. But it was joyful.
Doesn't make any difference what it was, does
It didn't make
it?
any difference. But I think I have to come back here. So I still don't know what it was. And I can't even speculate. You know?
Well, you know, I gave up a long time ago thinking that everything has to be cut and dried to somebody's understanding of something. You know, that's bull.
It is.
That's total bull. You know, I, of course, grew up primarily on the Navajo reservation. And, you know, early in the morning, you can hear one of those old medicine men, and he's out there at the little circle of rocks, little altar, if you want to call it, that he's built. And he's out there singing his prayers. And, you know, hey, he's right on target as far as I'm concerned. And I've had a couple of interesting experiences. One of them was, I had a friend in Alaska, and he was absolutely the old barefoot, long-haired hippie. In fact, he was with a religious group from Canoga Park that went up there. And after their religious leader was killed, why the group kind of just fell apart, you know. But Brother Isaiah was just, he was a wonderful man. And when he had found the leader of the group, he had PTSD from the Korean War. And he was just having terrible times because he had killed so many people in the war, you know, and it was weighing heavily on him. And he was getting into booze and drugs and stuff, and he said that Krishna Vinta kind of just, you know, okay, you're not Claude Bates anymore, you're Brother Isaiah, you know, open yourself up. And so he would go around to the different churches every Sunday, and he'd worship with somebody, you know, and he was always, he just thought that was wonderful, and you know, I sat and talked for hours with him about various things, various doctrines, various creeds, various ideas of who God was and what he or she was or was not, you know. And of course, I'm very comfortable and very devout in my own religion, but he came up to the house one night. Somebody had given him some fresh halibut, and so he came up to share it with us. And so Sally cooked supper for him, or for all of us, We sat and talked for a while. And as he got ready to leave, or after he left, Sally and I were coming back from the door, and I said, I said, I'd be really curious to know what Brother Isaiah's standing with the Lord is. And immediately, I believe in personal revelation. Immediately, I was very clearly told, you would be much better off worrying about your association with the Lord than Brother Isaiah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And I look at all of the things he did and stuff like that, and wonderful.
Yeah. I used to do that with the kids. We went to the Hare Krishna temple.
Yeah.
We went to the Jewish.
I did it with my kids,
it's
too.
It's wonderful. And my son now, by the way, has his PhD in world religion.
Mm-hmm.
And his dissertation was just published.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fascinating study.
But I've had, and from what I can gather, this seems to be more common amongst people with Native American, Tomahawk Indian blood.
Oh, this kind of experience?
Yes.
Really?
And also the experience of having visitations from the dead. I had Reynalda come and sit on the foot of my bed one evening.
Oh my gosh.
My grandpa Kelts came and rode with me between a couple of little towns in southern New Mexico one time.
Wow.
And I've had visions of my stepdad after he died.
Wow.
And, these are all things, and you tell these to a lot of people, and, oh, boy, I wonder what the hell he's been smoking.
I know.
You're having some flashbacks, are you?
Well, as I said, I can't explain. It's the first time anything like that has ever happened.
And I have absolutely no doubt that my version of deity was communicating with you in a way that made sense to you and that you would understand. And, did you feel better? Did it enrich your life?
Oh my God, did it ever.
Yeah. So, how can you disagree with something like that?
Exactly. Well, when we were in Taos, Robin said, why don't we go see a psychic? And I, again, very skeptical about all of these things. But we found out read about this woman who was a half Native American. It was really hard to find her place, but we finally got there. And I'm going, okay. Walked up on the porch, and she ignored Robin and looked at me and said, there's a lot of excitement about you around here. So I just ignored that. And then she started telling me that there was a dog with me all the time. When I was a little kid, I had a dog, Brownie, who used to be my escort. He would go with me to the movies and sit outside and wait for me and then walk me home. And then she kind of shuddered and she said, your mother's not dead, is she? And I said, no, why? She said, because she's got her teeth in your stomach. She said, do you have a lot of stomach problems? And I actually did.
Yeah.
And it just was too weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know what to make of any of that. And I also think that sometimes that a lot of it is just they have kind of stock things that they say because what daughter doesn't have trouble from time to time with her mother?
Sure.
But it was an interesting experience. I think what stuck with me was there's a lot of excitement around here about you because of the light. But yeah, it was a very, very interesting experience. And
well, I'm also a firm believer that there are good powers and bad powers, and you need to be very careful which ones you listen to, and evaluate. Okay, is this something that is going to make my life happier?
Right.
Is this something that's going to help me be a better person to those I come in contact with, or is it strictly selfish? And if it's strictly selfish, you might want to be very careful.
This was neutral, though. It wasn't anything.
No, it wasn't.
The experience I had.
Oh, the light?
Yeah.
That wasn't neutral.
Well, I mean, it wasn't something selfish.
No.
And it didn't involve anybody else. It was just.
But didn't it kind of energize you and rejuvenate you?
Yeah,
okay, well,
yeah, absolutely. absolutely. Yeah, I remember telling a guy, but
You know, the stuff that's negative, when it's all said and done, you kind of feel like you need to get up and take a shower
that's
maybe.
true. Oh no, this
And,
was beautiful.
and knowing that it wouldn't really help if you do.
It was a thing of great beauty.
Yes.
I went up to Chimayo with Robin, and I was, the Holy Chili place?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, during
yeah.
the summer, they lay out the
Mhm,
chili with the pistachios.
mhm.
And I was telling one of the guys there who was selling the chili about this experience, and he's nodding, and he said something similar, you have to be
Yeah,
careful,
yeah.
And he told me about some negative things that had happened to him, and then he shook his head, and he said, you don't really need a sixth sense if you use the 5 ones you got. You know how to use the 5, you don't need
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, one of my cousins sent me, or his wife, she gets one of these little, I don't know, spiritual pep talk thoughts every day type thing. And she sent me one the other day, and it said something about when you encounter a situation or you're making a decision or something, always trust your first instinct, because there is a lot of knowledge that you have that's just a little bit below the conscious level. And
We call intuition.
yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
And I firmly believe that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I used to fly a lot, and there's been more than once that I'd go out and pre-flight the plane, and I'd get in, and I'd taxi out to the edge of the runway, and nope, not going today.
Wow.
Turn around and
That's
go back.
interesting. Yeah.
You know, now, was I just being, spooky and goosey, or would have something bad happened? I don't know.
That's right.
I don't know. But
Why take a chance?
But I know darn good and well that I'm still here and can talk about it, and I might
Exactly.
not have been had I gone.
Exactly.
So.
My son did a lot of research on NDEs, near-death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also a fascinating subject. And it's really, nobody can say for sure whether or not
Yeah.
anything happens after we die. But sometimes I wonder about reincarnation, because just this experience of meeting someone for the first time and absolutely loathing them. You have no reason to. They don't remind you of anybody, but there's an antipathy that you just... and then the opposite. All of a sudden, it's just somebody you're ready to embrace.
I don't believe in reincarnation, but I do believe in genetic memory.
Carl Jung kind of unconscious,
Yeah, well,
collective unconscious.
if a bear scared your great-grandma, you're going to be a little leery of bears type thing.
Yeah.
But I had an experience 3 or 4 years ago in Branson. We live just a few miles, 90 miles from Branson. And every year there's a Silver Dollar City. It's kind of a hillbilly amusement park type thing. But they have a World Fest music deal. And so they have dance and music groups from all over the world come in there and perform. And they have some of the same ones come back all the time, but we always go for that. It's always interesting. But 3 or 4 years ago, there was a group there from a steel band from Trinidad and Tobago. And so here this guy was, a black guy. He was probably at least 6'4", very muscular, very handsome, dressed very nice. I mean, island dressed, but still, they weren't hand-me-downs, or he didn't get them from a thrift shop type thing. And he had some bling on and earrings in each ear, and his hair was kind of in ringlets, and I think he had jewels, precious metals on the end of the ringlets type thing. And I looked at that and I thought, that's kind of a over-the-top type thing there, He'd sure look a lot better if he didn't have all that gunk on it. Yeah, and all of a sudden, this spirit whispers to me, "Don't you recognize him?" What? Don't you recognize him?
Oh my gosh.
And I looked again, and tears just streaming down my face. And so I went up to him after the show, and I said, "Do you recognize me?" And he looked, and he said, "I don't think so." He said, "Do I know you?" And I said, "No, but I know you." And I said, "I don't know whether it was in the spirit life before we came to mortality, or what? I said, but you and I at one time were closer than brothers.
Wow.
And
Did he feel it then, or he just...
a little bit, I
little
think.
bit?
You know, he still, it was, you
Well,
know,
it's a weird
yeah,
thing.
it's a weird thing
I
to come up
bet
and
you
hit
liked
somebody
it.
with.
Wow.
And,
What a great story.
okay, so we're recording again. Tell me what you remember about your grandparents.
Well, I don't remember either grandfather, obviously.
Yeah.
Because Mitch left when the girls were little, and my father's father committed suicide when he was 12 years old. My father says he remembers him having horrible, horrible headaches. And now that I think of it, it's probably migraine or something, but he just couldn't bear it.
Couldn't deal with it anymore.
It was hell.
Yeah.
And, but I remember my grandmothers, and I was very, very close to both of them, except I loved Granny Ortiz. She was a very tall, stately, elegant woman. Problem is that she couldn't speak English at all, and I didn't speak Spanish, even though we both grew up hearing it. It sounded familiar, but it was still just...
Yeah.
And one of the things, too, is my mother didn't really want me to learn, because she said that if I grew up with an accent, people would think I was stupid.
Yeah.
And she's probably right in those days, you know. But I resent that a lot, because I feel like my cradle tongue was stolen away.
I feel exactly the same way.
But we would kind of communicate with gestures, and she was wonderful. I loved her. But we couldn't talk very much. But Reynalda was important to me because I lived with her while my father was in Europe during the war. My mother was working. She was a butcher during the day and a bartender at night. And Mary Helen was still living there. She was, I don't know if I guess she was still in high school. I'm not sure.
Probably, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. But we were very close, and she used to tell me wonderful stories. She would show me how to roll tortillas. Mine always looked like all the states. You'd never get them round. She told me some pretty gruesome, scary stories, by the way, but I loved it.
Yes.
I loved being scared. My mother had left strict orders not to give me the bottle, because I was, maybe 3 or 4. It's a little old for the bottle. But as soon as she left, Reynalda would take the bottle, very sweet, sugary milk. She'd heat it up and put me in her bed, and I was just so content and so happy. I loved being there. She told me wonderful stories, and in a way, she was kind of a negative example and a positive example. Yes. Negative because the thing I told you about that, she thought sex was horrible, and given her experience, I can understand her hatred of men. Sure. She said that sex was the way that women had to pay for their room and board and the care of their children, things you shouldn't really tell a kid. And she was also miserable a lot. She was not a happy person. But I used to be able to make her laugh, and I kind of was proud of that. She also had a little pillow that she said was a magic pillow, and if I used that, I would have happy dreams.
Well, darn, I never got the magic pillow.
Oh, I still have it somewhere. But the reason she was such a positive example to me is really one thing, and I didn't really understand it until years later. But it was before I was 11 years old, because it was before we moved to California, so I was young. And she said to me, always save a piece of yourself for yourself.
Super.
And I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. Yeah. But years later.
Yeah. You know now, don't you?
Boy, did I know. Did I ever know. And I have great memories of both of them. I only wish that I could have communicated with Granny Ortiz better. But,
one of my favorite memories of Reynalda, I must have been 11, 12, something like that. And she'd gotten rid of the house on coal, and it was about the second time she moved, and she was across from the old...
across the tracks?
Yeah, across the tracks from the supermarket there.
Yeah.
And so I went to visit her, and my little sister was with me, and she was maybe 6, probably closer to 5, maybe younger than that.
Yeah.
We were sitting there talking a little bit, and all of a sudden Joyce spoke up, and she said, "Are you my Grandma Mitchell too?"
Oh.
And Reynalda says, "Would you like me to be?"
Oh, really?
And she said, yeah. And she said, well, then, honey, I'm your Grandma Mitchell, too.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And gave her a hug and a kiss,
Oh,
and,
that's
you know,
so
just,
sweet.
and you know, how kind she was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she really was.
Yeah.
But then she would complain, like, I don't know, she probably told me 200 times and be really upset about it, that when she was a little kid, Philip spit on her head. Did you ever hear that one?
No.
Oh, yeah. Philip spit on her head. She had that cat, Tarzan.
Mm-hmm.
Remember? And when it was cold in the winter on Cole Street, that bathroom was really, really freezing.
Yeah.
And so they kept a pot in front of the
Sure.
cold stove in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And they put a big cutting board over it to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit there next to the stove getting warm in the morning. And one time she put a big tub of water on the cold stove and told me to get in there to give me, I thought she was going to cook me. But that's, you know, to heat up the water for the bath.
Sure.
But we used to go out together and walk along, because the tracks were right
Right,
behind
right
the
there,
house.
yeah.
We used to walk up and down the tracks with bags, pick up pieces of coal that would fall off the coal trains.
Sure.
And I remember that. Those are all wonderful memories.
Yes.
We'd go out in the backyard we'd do dishes. I'd help her with the dishes. And then we'd go out in the backyard with the pans. And she would get newspaper and water and dirt, and we'd scrub the pans.
Yes.
Just like Ajax.
Yes, I remember that.
Grit.
Yeah.
You did that too?
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing. And I remember one day I was digging out there and turned over some god-awful, hideous creature that scared me to death. Pink, and it was on its back, it was writhing, and it looked like a baby, and she said, that's a child of the earth.
Yes.
I'd never heard of that before, but just...
I've seen one or two of those. They're horrible looking things.
Horrible?
Yes.
But, no, I have great memories of her. I remember a lot of her complaining and suffering.
Yeah.
And, but I also remember, I felt really loved by her.
Yeah, I did too. You said that your father's parents were from Spain.
Yes.
Is that true?
Well, no, they were his grandparents.
His grandparents, okay,
were from
okay.
Spain. And then his mother and father were born in Santa Fe.
Okay.
And my grandmother had 13 children.
Okay.
13. My father was the 13th,
Mm-hmm.
and he weighed 13 pounds at birth.
Oh, ouch.
That's probably why he was the last.
I remember one of our children, I think it was Mary, she was 8 pounds, 7 3/4 ounces or something like that. And a couple, 3 days after she was born, when I was talking to somebody and on the phone, and they said, how much does she weigh? And I said, 8 pounds, 7 ounces. 7 3/4, I shouted.
How funny. Oh, my God.
Well, tell me about your children.
Oh, gosh, they're great. Tammy's the oldest. Her name is Tamara.
Okay.
Everybody calls her Tammy, which I don't like, but, you know, you can't help nicknames. She, oddly enough, started living my life early on. She married at 20 someone who is 15 years older than she.
Okay.
Was in the radio business and did very well. And she had a really great life, except that he wasn't a very nice person. He wasn't abusive. He was psychologically abusive.
Yes. Which is sometimes it'd be easier if they'd punch you instead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all she ever wanted was to be a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And had difficulty conceiving and went through this whole in vitro thing and finally got pregnant with Sean. And Earl, that was her husband's name.
I met him once,
You met him once?
I think I did, yeah.
He was really an ass. The boys don't really like him either, but she wanted him to be present at the birth, and he just didn't want to have anything to do with it. I'll go down to the bar and call me when it's over. He was just really a very unpleasant person. A psychologist once said that he was stuck. He had a borderline personality disorder, that he was stuck at the age of 2, where he believes that the world disappears when he goes to sleep and reappears when he wakes. You know, he's really, everything's about him. We were having dinner one night in San Diego. She was pregnant and so happy, and she was maybe a month away from her due date. And so I said, well, Earl, did you finally decide that, you know, whether you're going to be there or not at the birth? And he said, oh, God, don't even bring that up. And my daughter picks up her head and says, well, I'm sorry, I'm leaving out the most important part of the story. She'd been trying for all these years to get pregnant in vitro.
Yeah.
And one day her regular doctor wasn't there, and there was a female who did the next one,
Okay.
next to artificial insemination, and that's the one
That's
that
the one
worked.
that worked.
So she always said she got pregnant by a woman. But anyway, he said, are you going to be there at the bar, at the birth? And he said, I don't know, I don't want to talk about it. My daughter says, well, since you weren't present at the conception, there's no reason why you should be present at the birth. But, and strangely enough, it often happens this way.
Sure.
She got pregnant again
Yeah.
2 years
Yeah.
later. And on her 30th birthday, she decided that she couldn't deal with it anymore because things were fine when they didn't have children. I mean, they took trips, she had money, she had a BMW, but he didn't want to be a dad. And my grandson, my first grandson, Sean, is really very gifted and brilliant.
Excuse me first. Okay,
Oh, so Sean was the first.
Right.
First grandchild, and then two years later she had Ryan.
Right.
Both great kids, and Sean's in college now, and Ryan is graduating this year, and he's been accepted at UC Santa Cruz, of all places. Robin, middle child, is a screenwriter. She was married once and divorced because he was a drinker. Interestingly enough, though, she's one of those has one of those fairy tale stories where the young girl goes to New York to get into acting and marry a millionaire. It's exactly what she did.
What she did, yeah.
And in fact, his brother is Sheldon Whitehouse, who is the governor of Newport, Rhode Island. His father was Ambassador Whitehouse during the Vietnam War. And
That's where I remember the name from.
Charlie and Sheldon had to be airlifted out during the fall of Saigon. And this is like old money, I mean, old money.
Yeah.
And the family was horrified when he married Robin. I overheard someone call her a mongrel.
Yeah.
And the reason I think he adored her and still does, they're very close, and he's sober now, is because she was totally unlike anything he ever experienced. When they were little, the nanny would bring them downstairs to say goodnight to Mommy while they were having the cocktail party. And his sister, Sarah, all dressed up, and the nanny said, okay, say goodnight to your Mommy. And Sarah said, which one is my Mommy? Before they got married, she called me from Berkeley and said they invited her to go on this trip with them. And I realized it before she did, they were testing her to see how she could behave in public. She said, we're going to stay at this place. We're going to Austria, and we're going to stay at this place with these people called the Rothschilds or something. I said, are you kidding me? She had never heard of them. So I sent her a book. Now she's divorced. She's living in Santa Monica, and she's a screenwriter. She writes movies. And Greg, my son, I think I already told you, he's he did all of his education and then decided he didn't want to teach anymore. He doesn't like teaching. They hired him for a one-year job at Cork in Ireland to set up a religious studies program, which he did. He's in Spain now. What he really wants to do is move to Santa Fe and write. And he's getting into screenwriting also with Robin.
Well, both of your daughters are just absolutely drop-dead, gold-plated beautiful.
I agree. I agree. I have to agree with you. And my son is really handsome.
You were no slouch either. But,
well, the women were beautiful.
Yes.
My mother was a very beautiful woman.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And, well, what words of wisdom do you have for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren that'll be watching this years from now?
Oh, my gosh. Follow your bliss.
There you go.
And don't be afraid of aging.
Yep.
This country is really, really difficult, especially on women. But the older you get, the better it gets.
That's right.
And sing your own song.
I love it. Thank you. And I love you too.
I love you too.